Grand opening, grand closing. Porter77, your only friend in these YouTube streets. Let's have a conversation. Can we have a conversation, gaming community? There's console war. You got to look at console warring as a switch, as a light switch. You got to know when to turn it off, right? And when is the time to turn off the console war? Number one, turn off the switch when it becomes personal. That's like rule number one. Never make it personal. It's just a conversation on plastic and corporations. It doesn't mean anything. Corporations will be fine. The plastic will be fine. They'll be okay. And then number two, when to turn off the switch, is when you have the opportunity to gain knowledge, information that will ultimately benefit gamers. Regardless if you don't like the information or not, if it's true information that can be utilized to our own benefit, then it is what it is. Even if it's a knock on your favorite brand, or something that's positive to a brand you don't like. Regardless of what's being said, if it's a valid opportunity to learn and to digest, we should all take it and turn off the console war switch. But sadly, that level of strength in internal discipline does not exist in social media. Case in point, or a recent conversation or tweet, not conversation so much, but a tweet from a new development studio. They started out with 4 people, and I think they grew over time, but they're trying to kick off a new game called Quantum Era. And from their official account, it states, "We will have a couple of gameplay videos lined up to show off as soon as we can announce everything. We have started looking into optimizing the game for Xbox, but it is definitely going to take a bit of time, unfortunately. Quantum Era has been made to be played with the PS5's extremely fast SSD. The Xbox SSD is quite a bit slower, and so we are going to have to change things quite a bit to make up for that difference of speed." Now, they're just telling you, you got developers who are actually making games for the PlayStation 5 and the Xbox Series console, and they are telling you an issue that they're going through, but they are telling everyone that they're going to overcome that issue just from a different way. Now, we clearly see these two consoles have their strengths and weaknesses, right? One being 12T, FLOP, full RDNA, whatever. And the PlayStation 5, which is factually, has a better architecture with SSD. They chose a faster SSD, and they create an architecture that capitalizes and takes advantage of the speed of the SSD with the compression techniques, right? But of course, in concubine fashion, right, you got the attacks, the shit talkers, instead of just saying, all right, we're going to see how this plays out, instead of learning, all out rage and coping and seething from the concubines and attacking the developer, calling them fanboys. Keep in mind, they're making a game for the Xbox. They even said that they're going through issues, but they're going to figure out a way to make the game run good. So that way it's a good experience on Xbox, right? But of course, again, just madness and craziness that the studio had to come back and say, we want to set the record straight. That answering a question, honestly, was in no way us bashing Xbox for anything. All we did was point out the current issue that we have come across and that we will have to spend more time to fix it. A different platform may require different solutions. Nothing wrong with that. We will not release the Xbox version until it is ready and want Xbox fans to be able to enjoy the game experience and quality as much as PS5 fans. Also, the gameplay footage being thrown around is 2 years old. Was running on UE4. We are now on UE 5.2. And the game has changed and vastly improved since that footage. So, of course, these stands, you know, they going around damage controlling. I even had one on my timeline showing the image and be like, "Hey, yo, Border, don't be misleading your fans. Look at this image." And he just showed the image. Then of course, because fans don't know, I told you on my channel I have the Glimmermen. They are out there and they will call out BS. They took that image he showed, but they showed the full scope and showed that it was from a YouTube compressed video from 3 years ago. And they called them out. And he hasn't showed up since. It was real nice and quiet. No reply. You see? Now there's a problem with all this concubining and corporate slaving. This is not even corporate slaving. They're just straight concubines, right? Because at least a slave, chances are you're forced into that. But being a concubine is a choice. You're chosen to be second class, right? But there was a time where developers can say what they want about their consoles based on their experience and their knowledge, and it was received generally by everyone. Now, of course, you still have the people butthurt, right? But the vast majority across the board was like, all right, let's see what you got. For example, during the PS3 era, Gabe Newell, well-known developer, did not waste no time going at the PlayStation 3. Says right here, Valve's Gabe Newell, PS3 is a waste of everyone's time. In an interview on Edge's blog, Valve's Gabe Newell doesn't mince words when describing his disdain for the PS3. I think PS3 is a waste of everybody's time. Investing in the cell, investing in the SPE gives you no long-term benefit. There's nothing there that you're going to apply to anything else. And then he goes on. Complete thrashes. At one point, he even said that Sony just need to start over, just do a do-over. And this was like 2 months into the PlayStation 3 gen. Just stop selling the PS3 and just relaunch a new PS3. Do a mid-gen refresh, whatever. Just give it all up. But didn't stop there. Right? You had others. This article from 2011. What, about 5 years after the PS3 launch? And still, PS3 still a pain in the ass for developers. Pretty much the whole gen, developers had issue. It didn't stop. EA, this is a huge developer. The CEO at the time. EA continues to face challenges with PS3 development. This is 2012. We're talking, what? 6-7 months away from the PS4? Because the PS4 came out, the PS4 came out in 2013. So a year away. Or a year and 6 months away from the PS4. And people still talking about the issues with PlayStation 3. Up to 2012. The CEO of a company is chiming in. So we're talking Gabe Newell. And now a CEO of EA. A little light has been shed on the delays that EA has been seen on their titles developed for the Sony PlayStation 3. And if you don't understand that line, because you never owned the PS3, there were pretty much by default games that were timed exclusive on the Xbox 360, not because there was a deal or anything like that. It was just simply because developers needed more time for the PlayStation 3 version. So they had a choice. Launch all versions to include the PS3 at the same time, but the PS3 would be in very bad shape and would reflectly look bad on the company and the developers, or delay the PS3 version and just launch the 360 PC version. and the PS3 version will come out when it's ready and in good condition. And that's what happened. There was games that launched 2 months after the 360 PC version, 3 months, 6 months, anywhere in between. Various different stages. Simply because the PS3 was a terrible architecture for third party. And it impacted, the owners of the PS3. But the developers spoke out on that. So that way it wasn't their fault. It wasn't the developer's fault. Sony was the one that created this. Sony made this monstrosity. So why should everyone else take the blame when Sony made that decision? Take responsibility for the beast you created. And beast, not in the good way. Was saying the words monster, no, not in a good way. CEO John Riccitello, I hope I pronounced his last name. I apologize if I mispronounced it. Explained that games where we led development on the PS3 platform, like Burnout, which is doing very well on the market today, we had no issues at all. So I remember Criterion, I think they made Burnout. They were one of the first ones that stated they found the solution to the problem. Literally, developers were talking, trying to help each other out. And they said, build the PS3 version first. Build the PS3 version first, because when you port it to 360, simple. It's easy, because the 360 is so much better built. Go, and this pretty much you could say, go with the harder version. When you got that smooth out, the transition to 360 PC, kick. But if you go the other way, it's a challenge. And you'll see in the next sentence right here. Oh, I'm sorry. Let me put it on the screen for you. But he continued in circumstances where we either led on the Xbox 360 or ran parallel production. So now it wouldn't even work if you did both at the same time. The PS3 was still horrible. You absolutely had to develop first on the PS3, then just port over. So leading on the 360 or parallel wasn't going to work for the PS3. That's how difficult and challenging it was. For the most part, we're still experiencing some delay on the PS3. It's a little bit more of a challenging development environment for us. Now, these are big name guys. These aren't like small devs and whatever. These guys are telling us the issues of the PlayStation 3 are the bigwigs. And that was a good thing. That was good that they came out and told us that. And it was during a time where nobody would call them fanboys. Everybody would just be like, oh, snap. It didn't matter who you were. You would just realize, holy cow. The big names in the industry are telling us, yo, this is terrible. And this continue on year after year after year after year, all the way up until 2012. Right? So ultimately, what did that do, though? What did all the bashing from developers, telling the gamers, giving us this information do? Well, it helped get Sony. It helps Sony get their head out of their buttocks and realize that the process, their way of doing research and design, how they looked at the PlayStation brand, how dominant, all this stuff, they got humbled. And they had to realize that they had to go in a direction that actually made it easier for developers, not just third party, but even their own developers, to be able to make the games they want. Says this article, PS4 Declassified, how Sony used its PS3 mistakes to build the ultimate developer's console. The PlayStation 3 was a troubled machine, launching at a price that gave gamers fits and using technologies that gave developers headaches. This is how Sony avoided making the same mistake twice. They learned. The issues PlayStation 3 had wasn't covered up. It was upfront, transparent. The people who had the kits, the people who had the games and the experience, they were able to speak freely and tell us what's going on, so we knew what was happening, so we could hold Sony accountable. Because of the transparency, of how bad the PS3 was developed, Sony could not go out and repeat that same mistake again. They had to adapt. They had to learn. They had to correct their processes and their way of thinking. That's why they hired Mark Cerny, right? As, as a consultant. They needed his help. He did a keynote called The Road to PS4, and he explained the entire process going back to 2007 when they hired him. Right, literally months after the launch of the PlayStation 3, they immediately said, "Hey, we have problems. Let's go." And he was out there getting all this advice, learning from the developers that hated the architecture, learning about can x86 work on consoles, all that stuff. Right? So it was that foundational knowledge and truth and transparency from the developers that helped get PlayStation gamers a better product. Gamers in general, a better product was released. But keep in mind, this was during a time where we didn't really have social media as entwined into our life as we do today. Now social media can get you fired. It could ruin you for anything, even console warring. And that's how social media is being used today. It's being used as a weapon to either boycott products or cancel people or take doxing to a whole new level. So much stuff can be done now. And developers are afraid of this new environment. They don't want to partake and have communication with us and tell us what exactly they're experiencing with the development process. They don't want to be a part of it. Because the few that dared, you see what happens to them. They get attacked, they get destroyed, all this stuff, right? Because you hurt their feelings. You attack my favorite plastic box, not knowing that developers who have the plastic box are telling you information that you might want to know, and you can hold the company that makes your favorite plastic box to a higher standard. So that way they don't make the same mistake again. But y'all don't want to hear that. You don't want to hear the truth. So developers can't be transparent. And if they can't be transparent, we will never know what mistakes and issues these boxes have done, which will then eventually make the companies do better. But the real sad part is, it's not so much what it is a huge part of they don't want to hear bad part, right? I could maybe understand if they don't want to hear bad stuff at all from anybody. So, all right, I got it. You just don't want to hear anything about any product, period. But that's not the case. Because they don't want to hear negativity from people who actually have the dev kits. From people who actually are making the games, building the games, putting it together. No. We don't hear that. They're going to boycott you. They're going to attack you, dox you. They're going to try to get you fired. If these developers are being published by a higher company, whatever, they're going to go to the company. Oh, this is the people you hire. I'm going to boycott all your games. All that nonsense. Yeah. Those people, yeah, not acceptable. But these people, oh yeah, you love these guys. We love. This is what we love. Guys who don't make games. Look at this. Look when this tweet came. March 20th. We don't know shit from Shinola to Shampoo about these consoles. And look, laugh him out. Wow, what a doozy, buddy. Just so you understand, GPU alone on Series X is 40 to 50 frames per second faster than PS5. On top of that, it's likely better ray tracing. That's top of 100 plus gig per second. Oh my God. Look at this. 30% power advantage is a lot when you're talking better performance of pixels, better ray tracing, you name it. Almost every game will look and feel better on the Series X. Like, these guys have not touched a goddamn thing. Not one goddamn thing. And everybody jumped on that Poe train. And they have not made a game in their goddamn lives. Not one game. Ever. They made nothing. Nothing. Hell, goddamn tweet was from March 2020. The consoles didn't even come out till November. All over it. And boy, and the train didn't stop there. Look at this guy. Look at this guy. Also, I don't know what it was about March 2020, but these guys went ham in March. I've chatted to a few devs. Oh, you chatted to a few devs. Chatted. You're not the dev. Yourself. You don't have the dev kit yourself. You don't have the PS5 dev kit yourself. You chatted to devs. Oh, okay. Well, what did these devs you chatted told you? Back in March. They have confirmed the power difference is quite staggering. However, they have said it doesn't mean you can't make good games on the PS5. These fanboys clearly doesn't care about that and are massively rattled. They're massively rattled because you lied. You're right. You don't need power to make great games because look at the Switch. Making great games on that and that thing's massively weak. But when we jumping from performance to next generation, there is conversation in the initial gen of what can this console do? And you lied, C. Granell. I'm still calling you out. I will never let people forget this. Until you go live and apologize and admit you lied, I'll never post this again. But until that day comes and you make a video saying, I didn't really talk to anybody. I was just in the heat of the moment where Xbox podcast, my Twitter was lighting up with metrics, and I just followed the gravy train. Until you do that, you're just going to get shamed. Because we know the truth. That you were nowhere near the truth. But the worst part is, it's not him. Him, really, he's trying to get traction. He's trying to get the clout. You just want the clout. You want your Twitter timeline to light up like Christmas lights. Like the tree in Rockefeller Center in New York City. That's all you wanted. But the gamers accepted this. So gamers will take that, but you won't take actual devs making games. I don't understand the logic. It blows my mind. I don't get it. So the people that have the box, the people that are making the games, and they're like, man, this is troubling, but we're going to figure it out. Hey, fan base, we're going to give you some updates. We're doing good with this, but hey, with the Xbox, blah, 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 this is giving us trouble, but we'll figure out, give you good quality. They're telling you the truth of what they're going through. Now, sure, some questions, well, how come other studios don't have an issue? Well, one, they're not making the same exact game, right? Which is stupid to compare one studio with another. They're making a different game than everybody else. Totally different game. It's not like they're making Madden, a carbon copy of another studio's game, you know? It's not like they were tasked to make Call of Duty and they're having problems making Call of Duty on Xbox when other developers who also make Call of Duty didn't. No. So, come on, logical thinking. They're trying to make a game. They're trying to take advantage of certain technologies, right? They build the game first for PS5, just like how developers built the game on 360 first. And then when they cut over to the other platform, they're like, oh, wait. Ooh. Sounds familiar? They built the game on Xbox 360. And when they cut over to PS3, ooh. Man, we got to figure something out. And developers had no problem doing that during the PS3 era. Because it wasn't their fault. It was the people who made the console's fault. Sony. They're the blame for that. But we can't do that this gen, though. We could blame Sony for PS3. Even I said, the PS3 was a disaster. They should have never, and I even said that disaster and that mistake carried over to this day. Because that's the reason why the PS5 can't play PS3 games or the PS4 backwards compatible. That's how bad that gen was in terms of Sony making that decision. It was just, woo, it was a doozy. I'm so glad they learned from that. But you can't do that now. Can't say that now. You can hold Sony accountable for the disaster of the PS3, but you can't hold Microsoft accountable. And it's not even a disaster, right? It's just issues. Right? And if you point out Microsoft kind of screwed up with the SSD, it's a pretty big part of gaming, whatever. That tells them next gen to take it more serious. Even this gen, we all could say it, let's not lie, the Xbox Series S is a mistake. But if you don't allow people and developers to tell people, hey, this was a mistake, and you all pretend everything's okay, what's to stop Microsoft from doing the same decision next gen, where they release a very weak, underpowered console, and then the mid-gen refresh back to back? Who's to say they won't repeat the same process? Because everybody wants to be on the hush. Everybody wants to fake love a decision. Come on now. The reality is Sony learned from their mistakes because the mistake was transparent. People were vocal. Some of the best developers, the top companies, they were easily able to say what they wanted to say with no backlash because it was just facts. It was just the reality. It is what it is. It was Sony who decided to create that monster, and not in a good way. You know, I'm not using that term in a good way. It was them that created this monstrosity, this, you know, this literal whatever that people had to figure out, which was not worth the effort. And that helped Sony to get their head out of their buttocks and come up with a better process, not to repeat the same mistake for the following gen. That's it. Developers talking to us, giving us the lowdown. But this gen, because of the concubines and people that have no discipline, no intestinal fortitude, just a bunch of weakness, just weakness across the board. I don't know how you guys, I could probably understand now why you guys are so big and live your lives in the gaming community, because when you step out that door, you can't handle it. The outside world just straight slaps you up, or you feel like you're getting slapped up, and the world's not even doing anything. You're just so sensitive on anything that you have to contain and hide in the digital era. It's just asinine. And now, because of the weakness of people on the internet, the rest of us who can take criticism, who actually wants to know if the product is not doing what it's doing, from the top developers, we can't get that. Because everybody has to cater to the weakest link. If we are a chain, this chain is held by the weakest link of the community. And the rest of the chain links, the strong ones like us, there's nothing we can do. Because the developers, the biggest name companies, they will no longer talk about this. They're going to give bland statements, regardless how bad the platform is. They're going to give bland statements just to make everybody feel happy. They're not going to go out and say, this is a bad idea. Your favorite console maker screwed everything up. They can't do that no more. Because then, instead of the fan base saying, you know what? That's crazy. Hey, Sony, you screwed up. Hey, Microsoft, you screwed up. Nintendo, you screwed up. Whatever. Everybody's just going to go after the people trying to make the games, right? With the tools and hardware they got. You're going to go after them. You're going to boycott them. You're going to try to get them fired. It's not worth it. So if I was a developer and I'm like, man, this Xbox is trash, I ain't saying nothing. I'm not going to tell you a goddamn thing. I'm not losing my job because I want to be transparent with you. So that way I can let you know, hey, this is what's wrong with the console. That way your company can do something with this transparent information. No, I'm going to just hide it. And that benefits your brand's company because they don't have to accept responsibility for a piss poor product. They get away with it because you're doing the concubining, which is terrible. And it screws everybody over. But you let me know what you think. This is your only friend in the YouTube streets, Puerto77. Chat it up in the comments section. Let me know what you think. What is your opinion? Do you think we are getting screwed over because now most developers just won't be transparent with us because of the concubines and the weakness we have in this gaming community? Let me know. I hope you enjoyed this video. Stick around, subscribe, and like. You guys take care. Have a great weekend. Peace.